Cedar Grove was the kind of place where neighbours knew each other's names and children played freely in the streets. Small acts of kindness, seemingly random and entirely anonymous, started popping up all over town. The community felt closer than ever, united by this wave of unexpected generosity. As the acts of kindness continued, so did the whispers.
When my neighbor Paul confided in me about his own experience with the anonymous benefactor, I couldn't ignore the nagging questions.
I was struggling with mounting debt after my wife's illness. The mysterious payment of my rent, while a godsend, left me deeply disturbed.
Sophia, her journalistic instincts piqued, agreed to help Paul uncover the truth behind Cedar Grove's silent watcher. Sophia, though new to Cedar Grove, possessed the tenacity of a seasoned reporter.
Most people were happy to share their stories, their voices filled with a mixture of wonder and relief.
Sophia found herself drawn to the park at the heart of Cedar Grove, where she first encountered Elena Marsh, a former tech CEO turned philanthropist. Elena dedicated her life to the community, organising events, supporting local businesses, and always lending a helping hand. Sophia watched Elena interact with the townspeople, her smile warm, her gaze attentive.
Later that evening, I found myself drawn back to the park, this time under the cloak of twilight.
She discovered a small, intricately designed birdhouse with a tiny, almost imperceptible lens embedded in its facade. The more she looked, the more she found a network of hidden eyes monitoring every corner of the park.
Paul, you need to see this. I found something disturbing.
I knew it. I knew someone was watching.
Their investigation led them to Elena Marsh's doorstep.
Paul, we need to confront Elena, expose her secret, and force her to explain herself.
A knot of dread tightened in Sophia's stomach as she and Paul cautiously approached the basement door.
Paul, do you hear that? It's coming from the basement.
As they reached the bottom of the stairs, the basement opened up before them, revealing a spacious room bathed in the eerie glow of multiple computer monitors. Rows upon rows of screens lined the walls, each displaying a live feed from a different location around Cedar Grove.
Sophia, her heart pounding in her chest, approached the door cautiously.
The room was small and cluttered, filled with photographs, newspaper clippings and handwritten notes, all meticulously arranged on shelves and corkboards. In the center of the room stood a shrine, dedicated to a young girl with bright eyes and a mischievous smile. Sophia recognized the girl from a photo she had seen in the local newspaper. A photo accompanying an article about a tragic accident that had claimed the life of Elena's daughter several years earlier.
Paul, his anger giving way to a mixture of pity and unease, stepped further into the room.
Paul's own daughter, now grown and living across the country, had been Emily's age when the accident happened. He understood the need for control, the desperate desire to rewrite the past, to prevent such a tragedy from ever happening again. But understanding didn't equate to condoning. Elena's actions, however well-intentioned, were a betrayal of trust.
Sophia and Paul emerged from the dimly lit room, their faces etched with a mixture of anger, sadness, and a profound sense of violation.
Elena sat at a large desk, her back to them, her gaze fixed on a wall of monitors.
Elena, we need to talk.
I assume you've seen enough, Elena said, her voice devoid of inflection, her gaze fixed on Sophia.
Safe? By spying on everyone? By violating our privacy? By turning our lives into some kind of sick voyeuristic game?
There's no such thing as privacy anymore. Not in this world, not with the internet, not with cameras on every corner.
But this is different. You crossed a line, Elena. You invaded our lives, our homes, our most private moments.
Because mistakes have consequences. Consequences I can never outrun, no matter how hard I try.
Sophia and Paul exchanged a look. a shared understanding passing between them.
Elena, you can't bring Emily back. No amount of surveillance, no amount of control will change what happened. You've built a prison for yourself, Elena. A prison of fear and suspicion. And in doing so, you've trapped the people you care about most.
I just wanted to keep them safe.
Elena looked at Sophia, her eyes searching for judgment, for condemnation. Instead, she saw compassion, a flicker of understanding in Sophia's gaze. The weight of her actions, the years spent hiding behind her carefully constructed facade, crashed down upon her. Tears streamed down her face, washing away the carefully constructed walls she had built around her heart. She had spent so long trying to outrun her grief, to control the uncontrollable, that she had lost sight of what truly mattered. Sophia and Paul stood by her side, their anger giving way to a profound sense of sadness. They saw the woman beneath the surveillance, the mother consumed by grief, the human being desperately seeking solace in a world that offered none. The hum of the servers seemed to fade into the background, replaced by the sound of Elena's sobs, raw and heart-wrenching. In that moment, beneath the weight of truth, the walls of Elena's self-imposed prison began to crumble, revealing the fragile, wounded soul within. Elena Marsh, the architect of Cedar Grove's intricate surveillance network, believed her actions were rooted in altruism. She saw herself as a protector, a benevolent force shielding her community from harm. Her acts of kindness, the seemingly random gestures that had initially endeared her to the residents of Cedar Grove, were in her mind acts of love, of selfless devotion to her neighbours' well-being. But Elena's altruism, as with most things in Cedar Grove, was a carefully constructed illusion, a facade masking a far more complex and troubling truth. Her need to control, to manipulate, stemmed not from a place of genuine concern for others, but from a deep-seated need to assuage her own pain, to rewrite the tragic narrative that had come to define her life. Elena's actions, though cloaked in the language of care and protection, were ultimately self-serving. She derived a sense of power, of control, from knowing the intimate details of her neighbours' lives, from believing she held the power to shape their destinies. This need for control, for omnipotence, is a hallmark of what psychologists call altruistic narcissism. It's a subtle but pervasive form of narcissism in which individuals believe their actions are always for the greater good, even when those actions are harmful or exploitative. Elena, blinded by her pain, created a reality where her need for control became synonymous with her neighbour's protection. She convinced herself her invasive actions were justified. Cedar Grove's residents, initially grateful, became unwitting participants in her play. They accepted her gifts without questioning the source. They were lulled into a false sense of security. But this security came at a cost. Elena's surveillance eroded their community, replacing trust with suspicion. She created the very world she sought to protect them from. Cedar Grove's idyllic existence was shattered. Could the community recover and rebuild trust? Elena's surveillance operation, as morally reprehensible as it was, flourished because it thrived on a fundamental human paradox, the trade-off between privacy and convenience. While most residents of Cedar Grove would balk at the idea of someone peering into their homes, reading their emails, or listening to their conversations, many were willing to turn a blind eye when those very intrusions came packaged with the allure of safety and comfort. Elena understood this paradox implicitly. She knew that by offering her neighbours tangible benefits, a repaired fence, a paid bill, a sense of security in an increasingly uncertain world, she could subtly shift their perception of what was acceptable, what was worth sacrificing for a little peace of mind. This willingness to trade privacy for convenience, for a sense of security, is what psychologists refer to as the privacy paradox. It's the inherent conflict between our desire to keep our lives private and our willingness to surrender that privacy in exchange for something we perceive as valuable. In the digital age, this paradox has become even more pronounced. We readily share our personal information with tech giants, social media platforms, and online retailers, often without giving much thought to the potential consequences. We embrace technologies that track our movements, monitor our online behavior, and collect vast amounts of data about our lives, all in the name of convenience, personalization, and a false sense of security. Section 2. The slippery slope of acceptance. Elena's Cedar Grove was, in many ways, a microcosm of this larger societal trend. Her surveillance network, while operating on a smaller scale, exploited the same human vulnerabilities, the same willingness to compromise privacy for a perceived benefit. The danger of this gradual erosion of privacy, as Cedar Grove so starkly demonstrated, is that it often happens incrementally, almost imperceptibly. We become accustomed to the trade-offs, to the idea that a little less privacy is a small price to pay for a little more convenience, a little more security. But as we surrender more and more control over our personal information, as we become more comfortable with the idea of being watched, we risk normalizing surveillance, making it an accepted part of our lives. And once surveillance becomes normalized, once we cross that invisible line, it becomes increasingly difficult to draw it back, to reclaim the privacy we have so carelessly surrendered. We become trapped in a cycle of surveillance where our every move, every interaction is subject to scrutiny, where the very notion of privacy becomes a distant memory. Elena's actions, though morally indefensible, were not born in a vacuum. They were in many ways a manifestation of unaddressed trauma, a desperate attempt to regain a sense of control in a world that had spun violently out of control. The tragic loss of her daughter Emily had shattered Elena's world, leaving behind a gaping wound that refused to heal. Trauma, particularly trauma as profound as the loss of a child, can have a devastating impact on an individual's psyche. It can shatter their sense of safety, their belief in a just and predictable world, leaving them feeling vulnerable, exposed and desperate to regain a sense of control over their lives, even if that means exerting control over the lives of others. For Elena, the surveillance network became a shield, a way to protect herself and her community from the kind of random, senseless tragedy that had taken her daughter from her. By monitoring every corner of Cedar Grove, by anticipating and mitigating potential threats, she believed she could prevent another tragedy, could spare herself and others from the pain she knew all too well. But Elena's quest for control, driven by her unaddressed trauma, was ultimately misguided. It led her down a dark path, one paved with good intentions, but ultimately leading to a betrayal of trust, a violation of the very community she claimed to protect. Elena believed she was protecting her neighbors. Her trauma blurred the lines between care and control. Good intentions can pave the road to hell. True care respects others' autonomy. Elena's story is a cautionary tale. Cedar Grove's tranquility crumbled under Elena's actions, revealing the fragility of freedom. The community grappled with stolen privacy, their lives laid bare. Elena's surveillance network highlighted the allure of control and the fragility of freedom. Her story showed how easily privacy can be eroded. Cedar Grove residents traded privacy for security, becoming complicit in their own surveillance. Their story is a cautionary tale of small compromises eroding freedom. Elena's actions had far-reaching consequences. She sowed seeds of suspicion and distrust, shattering community bonds. The unraveling of Elena's surveillance offered hope. Sophia and Paul, driven by justice, exposed the truth. Their courage sparked a wave of reckoning in Cedar Grove. Residents questioned the trade-offs they made for security. The dismantling of surveillance was just the beginning. Amidst the wreckage, a renewed sense of community emerged. Cedar Grove's story, born from darkness, offered hope, a testament to the enduring power of choice and resilience.